Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Comic Source Podcast. I'm your host, Jace. Once again, we've been taken over by Bad Idea. We'll blame that damn button and Adam Freeman. But it's actually a good thing because for the first time ever, one of my favorite comic creators is joining us on the show. Matt Kindt, welcome. Thanks for joining me.
How's it going, man? Thanks for having me.
God, it's been so long that I've been following your work, and I can't believe we haven't had you on before. You know, we've met a few times at Valiant panels and whatnot, San Diego Comic-Con and such, so it's great to finally have you on. I guess we should start with sort of what our listeners may be familiar with. You want to give us a rundown of things you've worked on and you know, what you currently have coming out on the stands?
Man, I don't know.
It's a long list.
Yeah, we'll just start with the new stuff. I guess Eniac is the newest thing with Bad Idea, and then Whalesville, and those are the two new books there. I guess the Pizza Detective came out today for one day only, and I got the backup story in that. There's a I thought it was 8 pages. I might have made it longer. It might be more than 8 pages now, but got a nice backup story in there that's really fun. And then that's my latest Bad Idea stuff. And then what else am I doing? Fear Case is issue 4 is coming out or just came out with Tyler Jenkins. And I'm sure there's something else I'm forgetting.
Yeah, you're constantly working. I first discovered you on Mind Management over at Dark Horse. You had Department H on there, and if you guys are sensing a theme, that really seems to like conspiracy theories, big government, shadowy organizations. We're gonna talk about all that, but before we get into that, you know, so many of our listeners that join us for Bad Idea Sundays are you know they were diehard Valiant fans when Valiant came back. And so many of those great creators and people behind the scenes at Valiant are now at Bad Idea, putting out just fantastic stories, you know, doing it in a different way to drive more traffic into comic shops. So let's talk a little bit about how you came on board Bad Idea. I mean, did Dinesh approach you? You were there from the beginning. You were all in, going back, making comics with your friends. Like, give us some background on that.
Yeah. Well, it started at Valiant with Warren and Dinesh there, and then they had asked me to come in and write a Bloodshot thing, and then it just grew from there. I honestly wasn't doing any more work for hire. I'd sort of quit all my work for hire stuff because I don't like the process. I don't like, it's all dependent on like having good editors that can protect you from the editors and chiefs who can protect you from the company, you know,
Right.
like let you tell good stories. So I was sort of done with all that. It's like there's not enough control, you know. I can't control like the quality of the story, but so when I started working at Valiant with Warren, he gave me like the Bloodshot issue 0 just as like a tryout or whatever, and I guess from his point of view it was like, oh, let's try it, let's see what this guy's like to work with. And from my point of view, I was like, I don't want or need this, and I have an affinity for the Valiant stuff from back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
So it's fun, but not so fun that I'm real excited to do work for hire again.
Right.
And so I was giving Warren a tryout, you know, to see what he's like as an editor and see what Valiant was like as a publisher. And I was just going to do the one, and if it wasn't good, that's all I was going to do. But I had hit it off with both Warren and Dinesh, and then we just started doing more, and I had a great time working with them and having fun in the universe, and it was just a great working relationship. I was like, oh, well, it's not that work for hire doesn't have to be, it can be good, you know, if the whole team is good, you know. It doesn't happen very often, but it happened at Valiant. And then when they left, that really was like that was the thing that was keeping me there after so many years. Like I just like working with them. And so when they left, I was like, well, that's okay. I'm just going to go back to do my creator-owned thing. And Warren called me up and he's like, hey, we're starting this new thing. This is before it was called Bad Idea, and they're trying to come up with names for it. And I was like, yeah, it sounds good. I love working with you guys. I actually miss it. Like it was more of a collaboration, you know. To me, it's like when you collaborate with a really good artist, like there's a magic there that happens. And then working with Warren and Dinesh, it was similar, where it's like I have these ideas, and then they'll be like, oh, what about this? What about that? It's definitely more of a give and take with them.
Hmm.
with a lot of these ideas. And so they flew out to LA and met with them for a few days, and then we just talked about the idea of the company and then what it was going to be like and what kind of books and like how we wanted to present them and then what ideas, like what stories. And then when I came to that meeting, I came to the meeting with like maybe 40 ideas. Like I was like, these are things I want to do, things haven't gotten to, some things, new things I just put in there. And so we just went through the list of everything and tried to figure out like what would work with the company and what kind of stories, what kind of stories we want to tell. And basically it's what's great is like you can see the difference between something like Whalesville and Eniac, and the breadth of creative freedom we have is so great that we can do any story. So there are a lot of stories that I was like, I didn't know if they fit, but everything fits. If it's a good idea, it fits. And so I just started writing a bunch of stuff with Bad Idea, and it's just now starting to see the light of day, but we've been working on this for a couple of years.
Yeah, and the stories are fantastic, and it's so great to kind of. It's like you got the band back together, and I'd agree with you so much. Especially with the corporatization of comics. Big giant companies owning the big two now, and so often I say, uh, it just feels like the best creative decision is often diametrically opposed to the best business decision. So I can totally get where you're coming from, not wanting to do the work for hire. It's a different animal, both when Dinesh and Warren were at Valiant, and it's a different animal at Bad Idea. It's that continuing idea of if it's a good story idea, and that's what we're going to do. It's story first, and that's where a lot of these rules come in. And I think that's where there's a bit of a disconnect. So I kind of wanted to get your opinion on some of the pushback you guys have been getting at Bad Idea about these rules. I mean, to me, they make sense. They seem to be created to get as much foot traffic in the comic shops and help comic shops out, and to be sure nobody's hoarding the books or selling them for a huge amount of money. I mean, I know it happens, but the rules seem to be in place to not do that. So talk a little bit to us about your opinion on the structure of Bad Idea and this whole thing. Dinesh himself told me that I think that the disconnect with a lot of people, they don't understand that Bad Idea's goal is not to sell as many books as possible and make as much money as possible. You guys just want to make good comics.
Yeah, no, and here's the thing, I'm not super involved in the marketing part of it, so
Mm-hmm.
it's like I don't, a lot of it, when you guys see it, I'm seeing it,
Right.
and, but what I like is, I like the, I like the intent, and I like the personality that the marketing has of like, and I don't think it's like a little bit punk rock or whatever. I'm too old for punk rock, but
Yeah.
it's a little bit that, where it's uh, a little bit of controlled chaos, but which I'm always for. But I think everyone's heart is in the right place, and the idea is to get as many people into comic shops as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's why there aren't digital versions of it. It's not because we want these to be so rare and hard to get. It's because we want people to get into the habit of going back to comic shops on Wednesdays. And if you've never gone in on Wednesdays to a comic shop, go 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 in there and see what it's like and find the books and so yeah, I don't know, the little bit of backlash or whatever I see every once in a while. I was like, I just don't get it. It's like I don't. People are talking about the books. People are excited about the books. You can order the books, like the shops that are carrying the books. You can, I call up Warren. I was like, what's going on with these books? Like, people not able to get them? He's like, people can order them. You tell your shop that you want it, and they'll order, and you'll get the book. Like, there's no scarcity. If you want to read the story, it's available. And so I like it. I think that it puts a little more pressure on retailers, I think, to be more active and interactive and to be a little more hands-on. Um, and I don't mind that because I
Yeah.
think
No.
here's the thing is that what's hard? Selling comics is hard, but you know what else is hard? Making comics is hard, and doing it for as long as we've done it. It ain't easy. We're doing it. You're not in comics for 20 years because you are hoping to get rich or make a ton of money. You're in comics for 20 years because you love comics.
Right.
So that's what we're doing it for. And um and I think there's a lot of different approaches. I think I've been in comics so long now, I've seen all of it. I was there for the glut of black and white comics in the 90s, and I was there for Image when they first started, and not as a creator, but I was there as a fan and a reader in those early days. But I've been tracking the industry my whole life, and been seeing the ups and downs and the different ways people go about it. And I was like, well, I think it's great. It's like new, it's different. It's an exciting way to do it. There's how many comic publishers are out there, trying to promote their books or get people to look at them. And it's like, do we need another publisher? It's
Yeah.
like, the answer is probably not. So then why do it, unless you're going to do something a little bit different? I don't know.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a good point because we say all the time the best thing you can do for the comic publisher, for the creators, for the retailers is to pre-order. And that idea is sort of baked in with that idea. You need to pre-order. You need, as a reader, as a fan, you need to do a little bit of work. But to your point, if a local shop doesn't carry it, there's plenty of mail order. If you want the books, you can get the books. You just got to do a little bit of work. And you guys are even doing the not first print, which Dinesh told me you're trying to keep in print for a full year after the initial issue comes out. So it's not scarcity. It's just trying to change people's habits to get them to do what's best for retailers, do what's best for the comic industry, which is pre-order.
Yeah, no, I think, and if you do miss it, you should be able to, the shop should be able to order it again and everything. And don't rely on me for exactly how everything works. I'm like, honestly, I'm so busy writing.
Well, that's what we want you doing, Matt.
I'm only half paying attention, so if there's a problem, I see questions sometimes pop up and I'm like, I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah.
It's like,
Tag Dinesh. Yeah, tag
like, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
They can get the book. Yeah, no, I just think it's exciting. It reminds me of it really reminds me of when I first got into comics, and like it's hard to get people to pay attention to your book, to get them to buy the book, to keep buying the book, or there's a lot of noise, there's a lot of books out there, so anything we can do to get people to even just hear about the book, is a good thing.
Yeah, the other aspect of this, it's not only, I say getting the band back together. It's not only, Warren and Dinesh and Adam Freeman, Josh Johns, all those guys. So many of the creators over there, you got Joshua Dysart, you got Robert Venditti, you got, Louis LaRosa. Was that important to you that these guys, because when I talked to Rob last, he was talking about how great it is to be at a place where the creators can bounce story ideas off one another. And he was talking about missing cons because he's like, I don't get to, see Matt in person. I don't get to see Dysart in person and bounce ideas off each other. So how important was that for you to have these creators that you got to know at Valiant and work together? How important was it to know they were on board at Bad Idea as well?
No, it's good. It's really good because I know like we've all worked together in different ways and been writers retreats and different and have been friends. We kind of grew up in the industry together, so to me it's fun to still be a part of it and have the crew together. And but yeah, we haven't met. I haven't seen any of those guys in a year, so
Nope.
so I'm still missing it. But yeah, I'm excited to get to cons again and then see all the guys and get back together. But yeah, it's like comics is such a lonely medium already. Like just the every aspect of it is basically you working alone on a thing, and even if you're collaborating, you're still at some point you're just sitting in a room for hours at a time, weeks at a time, trying to get this thing done. And so it's important to have people you can bounce ideas off of, and yeah, I can't wait. I would love to have like a Bad Idea panel, some convention sometime.
Yeah, that would it's from a fan perspective. Yeah, it would be great. I mean, those Valiant panels back in the day were so much fun at San Comic-Con. They were always packed too. So even when you remember in the early years, it was always after hours, and the room would still be full.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. Well, let's talk a little bit about some of your work for Bad Ideas specifically. Obviously, Eniac #1 was a big hit, and there were shortages out of Bad Ideas control, but it made for a lot of buzz, and it in a way it was good because people were talking about Bad Idea, but kind of the thing that bothered me about it a little bit was so many people were talking about, I wasn't able to get it and they're manipulating the market, whatever. there weren't, I felt like, especially the day of, there weren't enough people talking about how incredible the story was that you came up with. So remind everybody, what's the elevator pitch for ENIAC, and talk a little bit about developing the idea.
Yeah. The elevator pitch is that there's the very first computer developed in the 40s during the World War II. This part is real. Was ENIAC. It's a bunch of tubes and basically punch cards, and it was a way to calculate sort of like artillery strikes and different things. It was basically like a big calculator that they had built and sort of pre-programmed to run math equations. So that's a real thing that when I was researching something else, probably some spy thing in World War II, I ran across that and I was like, "Wow, that's great." And so then the big idea is just taking that and exploding it, and with the idea that like, well, what happened if we hired like an army of people to pre-program this first computer with as much knowledge as possible and make it this giant thing, and it became the first AI, and then it ended up being responsible for ending World War II. And I won't spoil too much, but the idea of it starting there and then being part of Earth's history and politics from World War II to present day, and it sort of doing something behind the scenes the entire time over all those years, 60, 80 years, with a bigger goal and a bigger mission that's kind of a secret, and that we find out in issue 4, kind of what it was up to. So it's like all those it's the tropes of like the evil AI, and it's like, oh, and how do we defeat it, and it's taking over it's all of that stuff that we've seen, I've seen before, and sort of putting a twist on it. So sort of like meeting your expectation of like, oh, it's going to be an evil AI, and then subverting that.
Yeah, you really do a great job of keeping us guessing. You know, we had the third issue come out about a week ago now, and man, every time I think I might have an idea of where you're going, you kind of pull the rug out from under us, and nope, turns out ENIAC is still who knows how many steps ahead.
Yeah. We don't know what he's doing. I can guarantee you no one's guessing what. So far, I haven't seen anyone guess what's actually going to happen.
So I think our latest theory that we had when we talked about it last Sunday was that maybe ENIAC is trying to commit suicide in a way, because it thinks that it realizes that it's actually harmful to society.
You guessed it.
Did I really?
No.
Oh, damn it! Yeah, you just got to guess. But here's the other thing about it. The world that you've built is so rich. You've done it so quickly. It's so tightly paced. Yet we still have character moments. And that's what I find so fascinating, because in previous work, you know, I mentioned earlier about how you love to do this conspiracy stuff, you know, my management, Department H, even in Ninjak, introducing the Ninja program. And you've done it here so quickly. How much of that was a challenge to not have kind of a longer series to kind of flesh these ideas out?
Yeah, it was actually hard, and it wasn't like the length of the series so much as it is the structure of the story, which takes place over, you know, a huge amount of time. Was it 60, 80 years?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't usually, almost all the stories I tell, almost everything I've ever written has always been like a couple of years. Time progresses slowly. Like you start at a certain point, and then you're going day by day or week by week, or and you're following like a core set of characters. For this one, it's like it spans 80 years, and then the main character is an artificial intelligence, which you know what I mean? Like that's not a great main character.
Right.
And then so then how do you have a human element or have human interest that can span all of that time, but also in a very dense 4 issues, you know? And I kept adding pages. I kept telling Warren, I was like, we need more pages. I finished issue 1. I was like, and then as soon as I was done and I read the thing, I was like, you know what, we need that. There was a 5-page scene that I wanted to put in, and then there wasn't the room. And then when I read it, I was like, Warren, I was like, we need that. It needs it. And he's like, you're right. And so we added it because it's, and so it was one of the harder things I've written, you know, just because the elements were totally different, things I hadn't really messed with before, and I had the basic idea is like, I know where it's going, I know what ENIAC's about and what's going to happen, kind of, but then how do you make that engaging? you know, all the way through. That was a little trickier for this one. Also,
Yeah,
having
well,
Doug on art really helped.
well, yeah. I mean, we'll talk about Doug Braithwaite art in a minute, but again, to the point of working at a company where they're going to do what's best for the story. I mean, you go to one of the big two. I need 5 more pages. No, they're going to laugh you out of the room. So it's great that at Bad Idea you have the freedom to do that. Um, the other aspect of this is that, again, talking about the conspiracy theory and whatnot, and knowing that you're going to have to cover so much time, um, but you tie it in so many places to real world events. Was that always your plan from the beginning? Are you a big history buff? Because I always find that fascinating, because it's peeking behind the scenes and wait, that disaster was actually, kind of tying into this natural tendency we have to think there are, forces at work and conspiracies and whatnot.
Yeah, no, I'm a huge history buff, you know, and that's like World War II is one of my favorite eras in history, only because there's so many stories that came out of it. Like so
Mm-hmm.
much great stuff happened, not just in like Europe or whatever, but all over the world. So it's like to me that's I keep going back to that. But then the older I get, the more I feel like now I'm going back further and further
Right.
and like I was like, what happened to the Aztecs? You know, like I love it's like it's the stuff you kind of they skim over in school, and then unless you take a ton of history. So now I'm just going back and just digging deep into all of this stuff, just because I'm fascinated by all of it. Um, but yeah, and then with the conspiracy, I feel like to me history is a great canvas to work in. You know, it allows you to like time travel in a way. So to me, it's not so much about the conspiracy or the like what really happened kind of thing. It's more of just a way for me to like go back and sort of relive a thing or explore an excuse to explore some history and figure something out and then like tell a story that sort of weaves into it, you know. But yeah, and I think when I was younger, I was obsessed with like the Kennedy assassination, and I
Mm-hmm.
blame this high school history teacher I had was he was obsessed with it. So I blame him for my early obsession of like it was American history, but like we had oh, too much time spent just in like the Kennedy part, you know. And I in hindsight I'm like that guy he was obsessed with like the whatever the second gunman or all
Yeah.
this, and I'm like he planted that seed in me, and so for years afterwards I was like read the Warren Report and delved into it, and then but then the older I got, the more I started realizing I was like, you know what? It's like the Occam's razor. It's like the simplest explanation is probably the right one, you
Yeah.
know. And so the older I get, the more I'm like, sometimes things just happen. Some things are just weird.
Yeah. Yeah. Life is
uh,
weird.
yeah, and so I'm less apt to believe in like vast conspiracies, but it doesn't mean I don't like weaving stories in and around them.
Yeah, when you're doing your research, do you find yourself sometimes falling down rabbit holes? Like you're reading one thing and it leads you to another, to before you know it, you got like 50 browser links open.
Yeah, oh my gosh. Yeah, it's insane. And then when I lately I've been going to bed at night and listening to something podcasts or video YouTube or whatever when I go to sleep, and I just go through these you wake up in the morning. I'll go to bed listening to like Aztecs, what happened, the fall of the Aztecs. And then when I wake up in the morning I'm in Angkor Wat. I don't know how to say it. Anyway, but it's something about that. I'm waking up to something completely different, and
Right.
what is going on? And then I got to go rewind it. I was like, now I got to know what. I only heard
Yeah.
the
What it's
first half
talking
of the
about.
second half.
Yeah. Yeah. That's fantastic. Well, we mentioned your artist Doug Braithwaite on Eniac. Art is absolutely incredible, and I feel like that adds to the challenge too, right? Because the story's so dense. If you could get even more story if you put more panels on the page, right? But with Doug's art, we don't want more panels on the page. We actually want less panels. So it's trying to find this balance because we want to be able to see the details. So, did you have him in mind for the story? Was that Warren's idea? Talk a little bit about that, Doug coming on, and also how the collaboration has been.
Yeah, yeah. We always have a talk when when the story is when we're hatching the story when I'm writing it. So by the time I'm writing the first issue, I know who's going to be doing it because I think that's really important. Like you need to be able to write for the artists. You know, it's just
Mm-hmm.
because everybody's different. Everybody I've worked with is different, has different strengths. So I knew that Doug was going to be drawing it, and I knew that it was real dense. So I know that he's going to hate like the early stuff where it's just like a guy talking to another guy, and there's a computer in the background. Like there's not that was a real struggle. Is like I felt like the idea is great, but visually, it's like how do we make this visually exciting? You know, and it's
Mhm.
like I know I'm not drawing it, but I know that I do draw comics also, and I know that I would hate drawing this thing the way the original version of it. I was like, I don't know, what would I draw here? You know, and so that's part of it is trying to figure out like what's the visual hook, what's the exciting thing to draw, and there's an image of Eniac that he came up with. I don't know. I hope it's come out already, but I think it's issue 3. But it's just like these long tendrils of
Yeah,
cable.
it's in issue 2. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I was like, well, there we go. That's it then. It's like because what does ENIAC look like? Like he's sort of a weird main character to have that's sort of nebulous as far as what he is, and uh and so that was interesting because I wanted to keep it grounded and keep it something real that could have happened to a degree, um, but also we need something cool for Doug to draw. And that's what issue 4 again was one where I kind of finished it and I was like, boy, I really, I want more. Looking at it, I was like, I want more. So I went back and again, this is the great thing with Bad Idea. It's like, hey, can we add like, I think I added 8 more pages
Wow.
just to be able to spread it out because it's so dense and like wasn't fitting in the format we had initially like sort of figured.
Hmm.
And and there's so much story, and we just wanted a chance for Doug to be able to like blow it out. So there's 6 pages. There's 3 spreads actually that are just like when I wrote them, I was like, okay, this is 3 panels if you want it. It's 2 panels if you want it, or it's whatever you want. But they're wide. It's across the whole spread,
Right.
um, and then times 3. So 3 spreads. They're just like takes up both pages and reads all the way across. And I was like, yeah, that's Doug's the thing he's best at is those big wide
Yeah.
shots, something super cool, and he does a great job of like foreground
Hmm.
background. So there's like something interesting happening in the foreground with a guy who's like turning around yelling, and then there's some big thing in the middle ground, and then the way he stages it is just so good that I felt like we owed it to him to give him like a little bit of a reward for all of the dense storytelling he did earlier.
Yeah, well, like to your point, there's not always a ton of action going on. Doug's great at facial expressions, and he's great with camera angle. So when we zoom in on one of these characters, one of these uh, special forces soldiers that are trying to take out ENIAC, it's great, and you can see the detail. But you're right, getting Doug to do something big and cinematic with multiple layers is where he shines, and it's great. You yourself, you mentioned as an artist, kind of can understand playing to an artist's strength. Was there a lot of back and forth for any parts of the story where you thought maybe we'll lay it out visually this way, and Doug's like, no, it'll work better that way? How does that work? Because as we just mentioned, you are an artist yourself, so oftentimes you probably have an idea of how you would draw it. Might not be how necessarily Doug would draw it.
Yeah, no. I let Doug, especially knowing Doug's going to be drawing it, right? So I know that he's so great at the camera angles and everything. He's going to make it cooler than I'm writing it. So there was never a time where I'm like, oh, maybe this or that. I was like there's only one sequence that was tricky, and it was at the very beginning, and it's where they're in the desert, and then we're sort of seeing at the end. It was the last page or two, and it's where they're in the desert, and then I think it was the last. I can't remember where, but it's where they're talking in the desert, and then you pull back, and then you see that there's like a reflection in some solar panels, and then
Yeah.
you pull back, and there's a reflection in the mirror of the truck that they parked further away, and then you pull back, and then you can see that there's a satellite
Hmm.
that's basically like watching the mirror that's bouncing off of the solar panel, bouncing off to them in the desert naked talking.
Yeah.
No, the ENIAC. Now you see the ENIAC is even no matter how
Collecting.
far they go,
Yep.
or how desolate it is, you can figure out a way to sort of see what's going on. And that was a hard sequence, and I was hard. I wrote it, and then I was like, and then it took a couple of tries to get it figured out because also there's like color. We had color had to help with it too because it's not an easy. It just
Yeah.
wasn't an easy thing to like get across in comics. It's like really hard to show that. Like if it was a movie, it'd be real easy. You just keep pulling back, pulling back,
Yeah.
pulling back. But comics is different where the reader has to sort of fill in the gaps. So like figuring out how much to show and whatever. That was, I think we all struggled a little bit with that and then finally figured it out.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned color because Diego Rodriguez, the colorist, he has captured the mood that you're going for. This overall, the whole series, as we're following these two special ops soldiers, we feel the menace that they feel. That Eniac is, even, I mean, they're constantly like looking over their shoulder. He always is 1 or 2 or 10 steps ahead, and he's showcasing Doug's art so well. But he has captured the tone, and it's bright and it's wonderful. Like he's done an incredible job. You have to just be thrilled with the job Diego's done.
Yeah, no, he does a good job, and then coloring Doug's art is tricky too because with the Doug does like enhanced pencil, like it's not inked traditionally, so it's like the colorist has to be really good at what they're doing to let Doug's art show through and everything without like muddying it up and everything, and then but yeah, they're just a good team.
Yeah, they're fantastic. Well, I'm glad that I'm wrong, and not surprised that I'm wrong. I don't know the ending yet, so come the first week of June, I can't wait for the ending, and then to be able to sit down and read it all at once is fantastic. And God, I would love to just have you do like go back and revisit this story, revisit Eniac in some way, even if it's just filling in those gaps, like a one shot, even if it's like one page after another going, Eniac was behind this. Eniac was behind 9/11. Eniac was behind the London bombing. Eniac was, in different ways, that would be fantastic because I love that. I love that part. There's one, I won't spoil it, but there's one thing that we find out in issue 3 that Eniac was involved in that really plays into the story, and it blew me away because I remember that moment in history. I think I was in like the 6th grade when it happened, and
About 1985. I won't spoil it either, but
yeah.
yeah.
It was just
Yeah.
so, oh my God, when it happened, and yeah, it was so cool. So
Yeah, no, I was the same. I was probably around the same age,
yeah,
and that's why I put that in there because it's one of those. It's like one of the first moments for me where it's like, oh, I remember exactly where I was at and what happened that day and everything.
yeah, I remember being in school and an announcement coming over the PA system and being like, oh my God, it's crazy. The other book that you just had come out same day as Eniac 3, obviously Whalesville. This is the first all ages book from Bad Idea, and it to your point earlier about the breadth of stories that you're telling there, and we even had a second story, Rocks and Minerals. So I mean, they're so out there and fun. I don't know if you can sum them up succinctly, but kind of give people an idea what these two stories are about.
Yeah, well, Whalesville is about a kid who wakes up inside a whale, and then and he discovers that there's this whole little miniature city in there that these animals have built. So there's like a crab and sort of like a fish and a pelican and some other little creatures, and they've built like a little society for themselves, and they live inside this whale. And so this kid doesn't really remember what happened or how he got there or what's going on, and so he sort of interacts with the animals and then eventually figures out, like I don't think he even knows he's in a whale at the beginning. He's not sure what's going on, and so he slowly starts to figure out what's happened, and then has to decide sort of how to escape or if he's going to escape, and the other little animals have to sort of decide what they're going to do as well. I don't want to spoil too much. So that's kind of the recap for that, and then Rocks and Minerals takes place at the end of the world, and the only thing living are rocks and minerals that have become sentient. So they're I don't know how to make that sound less weird.
Yeah,
But basically, like all the characters are different kinds of rocks, different kinds of minerals, and they've built up society. It's like imagine Planet of the Apes, but instead of apes, it's rocks and minerals.
yeah, that's a good way to describe it. Fantastic. Well, it was wonderful. It really was. I was so happy that you were giving us an all ages book. The Adam Kalina art, stylized and beautiful with all this detail, and so it was so great. So I got my hands on it, the day it came out, but I didn't get to read it for several days because my 9-year-old daughter, was so busy, and I wanted to experience it with her, I want to experience it for the first time, reading it together. And
Yeah.
it was so great. So we finished reading it, and she's walking around the house the rest of the day going, "What's a whale? What's a whale?" Because there's this line in the book that, because it's not only the boy, these animals that live inside, they don't even know that they're inside. They don't even know, they have no concept of what a whale is. And
Yeah.
when the little boy realizes it and says something about it, they're like, "What's a whale?" She was walking around the rest of the day. "What's a whale, Daddy? What's a whale?" It was so great. So, um, what was the impetus for this? Was it just that hey, we're at Bad Idea, we can do whatever the hell we want. I want to tell some really fun all ages stories that are just kind of out there.
Yeah, when I had the initial meeting with them, I brought those 40 ideas. There was a handful of ideas that were young, or not young. They were all ages ideas that I was like that I had come up with, and they sat there. These two in particular sat there, and I hadn't done anything with them because I couldn't figure out visually like what to do. I couldn't figure out like how to draw them, and so I liked the ideas, but they were like, I was like, I just think they're too weird. Like, I can't figure out how to visualize, like with my art style or how I would do it. I can't picture it from idea to paper, what I'm actually going to draw. Um, and so those ideas just sat there forever. And I was like, I like them. I just don't know what to do. And they seemed kind of half baked or whatever.
Right.
And I was like, and there was a reason why. I was like, there's a reason why I'm not doing those. And it's because they're just too weird, or it's something not right. Uh, but then when I had the meeting with Warren and Dinesh, they're like they love those two ideas, and I was like, what? I go, well, I don't understand what you see in these. I don't get it. I was doubting. I was doubting it, and then they believed in them so much that I was like, okay, I'm going to write them, but I don't, I'm just going to go ahead and do it, but I don't see it. I still don't see it. And visually, I don't see it. So I knew that I wasn't going to be having to draw them. So I was like, what I'll do is I'm just going to write it, and I'll describe what I can describe. And even when I was describing it, usually I can picture the page, like, because when I'm writing, I'm picturing like how I would lay it out and what I would do. For both of these books, I was like, I have no image in my head when I'm writing it. I'm describing what's happening. I'm describing the characters, but I'm not seeing them. And it was so weird. It was like drawing with my eyes closed. I was like, I don't know. And so then I wrote both stories, and then they gave them one to Adam and one to Tony, and the art started coming in. And I was like, oh my God, it was perfect. It was like uh, I think I was holding my ability, my artistic ability is I'm in this lane and I can do this. I can work within this realm,
Right.
and I think that's what I needed to work with artists who can work in this bigger space and can think about it differently and come at it differently and they don't have a preconceived idea in their head of what is possible or what I'm able to do. They do what they do, and so the pages came in. I'm like, oh my God, it's working. It really works, and and the story works. But then they were able to figure out how to visualize these super weird ideas, in a way that I never did because I just couldn't figure it out.
Yeah, and the art is fantastic. Whalesville, you can get lost in the details. It's so detailed what Adam has done, and the design. The way the fish is, kind of scooting around on a roller skate, and rocks
Yeah.
and minerals, just brilliant. There's a character that's like Flint Rock, and I won't say more than that. He's my
Yeah.
favorite in rocks and minerals. He's so great for Tony to the way he visualized them and his kind of grr kind of thing. It was just perfect. So, um, have you heard from fans? Like, have a lot of people been reaching out, and do you have a sense of the reaction and how Walesville has been received?
Yeah, it seems good, and it's what's interesting about Whalesville, um, is that I wrote it with, as I was writing it, it's the elevator pitch is what it was, right? When I was writing it, and then it's like a kid wakes up in a whale and blah blah and has to figure out how he's going to get out. But as I was writing it, when I was done writing it, I was like, oh, it's about something else, you know? It's like, that's the story. But what it's about is this other thing, which is, for me, the best stories are the ones where like it can be about this other thing, but it's not. You can read it a different way. And
Right.
so it wasn't until I was done writing it that I realized what I'd really written about. Um, and then I was like, oh, this is kind of, it's sad and it's a little touching and everything. And I, and I, lo- and then I talked to Warren about it, and I turned the script in, and he's like, "This is great." He's like, it really is a metaphor for and I'm not going to say what he said it was,
Right.
but I was like, no, oh, Warren, no, it's not. That's not it at all. That's absolutely not what it is. But then when I looked at it from his point of view, I was like, oh, but it can be.
It
It
can
is.
be. Yeah.
It can be that, you know. And then I was like, oh, this is great. It's like one of those. And I wrote another story that was similar to this called Three Story, and it was for Dark Horse. It was years ago. It might be 10 years old, but it was about a guy who grew 3 stories tall. He was like a giant, and it's just like what his life is like um, as this giant guy or whatever. And then what was interesting about that story and what happened with Whalesville is that everybody that has read it and given me any kind of like response, they've gotten something completely different out of it. You know, it's like I wrote it, and then I was like, oh, this is. I can tell my subconscious was like dealing with this thing, and this is what it is. But everybody that's read it has brought their own. They've found their own sort of thing, meaning in it, you know. And I was like, oh, this is one of those kind of stories where it can mean different things to different people. But it's also just a fun story. If your kid's reading it, you know, they're gonna be like, oh, that's cool, and
Yeah, they're gonna walk around the house the rest of the day saying, "What's a whale?"
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. But you're right. It's so great because as readers, as fans, we all bring our own life experiences. And what's so great, I don't think these kind of stories you as a writer, and please correct me if I'm wrong. As a writer, I don't think you can say I'm going to write a story that does this, that it means different things to different people. I mean that's like trying to catch lightning in a bottle, right? Like it's so hard to do. It's got to happen naturally.
Yeah, it happens. It really has to be an accident, you know, for it to really work. And that's why the only other book I've done like that is Three Story. And then when this one came out, I was like, oh, I recognized it this time. Because Three Story, I didn't know until afterwards, and I'd never done a book like that. But then after that, I was like, oh, I can see how that's cool, how that can work, you know. And then I recognized all that happening again after I was done writing it. I was like, oh, this is that, just based off Warren's response to it. And that's what I think it is. It can't be on purpose, you know, and it can't be like some of my least favorite kinds of stories are like stories where it's obvious metaphors, like Animal Farm or something like that.
Yeah.
Like I was like, oh, okay, I get it. The pig is this, the dog is that. There's like all these analogs that, and it's really about this other thing. I don't like that. I like an idea that it can stand on. It is this. It is a kid who's stuck in a whale and he's trying to get out. Right? That's what it is, you know. But it's also can be this other thing.
Yeah, well, it gets it feels preachy when you're hit over the head with it, right?
Yeah.
You're hit over the head with the idea, and Whalesville is not that. But the last thing that I wanted to talk about Whalesville, in terms of the presentation of it, it's such a beautiful book. You know, all of Bad Ideas books have the highest production value, and this is such a great product, and you're getting to see Adam Polina's art and you know Matt Hollinsworth colors and Tony Millionaire's art in such a great way. So as a creator, you know, when you kind of put this work out there, it's kind of like your own child. How gratifying is it to see that it comes in such a you know a great package that has these great production values?
No, it's really important to me. I my first job out of school was graphic designer. So every book I've ever done, I've drawn. I've designed, you know, and even some of the ones that I'm not drawing, I'll design the logo or I'll art direct the way it looks, just because it's super important. Like the first page of the story is the cover of the book. That's the first thing you see. That should be the thing that pulls you into the story. So I think it really is like the most important thing, and so it's great to be able to just hand it off to them, and then like the spot gloss and all the printing and the cover stock and all that stuff. I'm a huge design nerd, so when it looks great, it makes me relieved. Like it's great because like even the Valiant books too, like the logo, all the design treatments of everything or whatever is always good. So I know that Warren and Dinesh have great taste, so I don't have to worry about it. There's other books where if I let it go and then it comes in, I was like, okay, I
Yeah.
was like, let me tell you what I want exactly. I'm not a horrible control freak except when it's not right.
Yep. Well, you know what? That's the thing. It's kind of like lettering in comics. If it's done correctly, nobody notices it. Same
No.
thing with the design. If it's done correctly, nobody really notices it. But when it's done incorrectly, you notice.
Yeah.
It can ruin the story. So, really important. Well, it's been great talking to you, Matt. Thanks so much for taking the time. I think not necessarily officially announced, but you do have Megalith coming up with Bad Idea. More ideas percolating over there. I mean, I'm sure we're not going to see all 40, but I mean, should we expect to continue to see your work at Bad Idea for the foreseeable future?
Yeah. We'll see all 40. We will. But yeah, definitely. There's a bunch of stuff. The hero. We didn't even talk about the hero trade and all those little short stories and how
Oh
those.
yeah, let's touch on that a little bit. Those are so interesting. The B-side stories, the backup stuff, David Lapham, and they aren't overtly connected, yet it all seems like it can be in the same universe. I don't know if you're allowed to say, but how fun has that been?
No, it's been great. What's funny is I wrote the first two stories. I wrote the first story as just as the one with the guy in the trunk or whatever, and he's selling the pieces of the superhero, and and then the next one I wrote, trying to think of what order they went in, but the next one I wrote, I was like, oh, you know what? That's what it was. After I wrote that one, there was another thing where I'm like, oh, this is it was like a fun sort of like dark superhero story. I was like, oh, it has this other little meaning to it, And then so when I was going into the next one, I was like, okay, I was like, I was like, I don't really want to write superhero stories anymore, but I'm going to be writing these, and I had an idea for a handful of them, and I was like, well, okay, well, so every one of them, I told Warren when they're all done, I would love to see a collection of them, and I would write an essay that you would read afterwards, and I never do this, but like sort of explaining what they are, because they're one thing and then there's something else altogether, and sort of just writing an essay, because really it is like those are visual or sequential art essays on like my thoughts on the comic book industry and in general. They're not about superheroes, but just about comic books and being a creator,
Right.
and so that I am writing consciously, knowing that that's what they're about, but also trying to keep them just super dark, fun superhero stories. But yeah, there's a few more of those that are in the works.
That's fantastic. Yeah, and I could totally now that I didn't necessarily pick up on that, but now that you're saying it, I'm like, yeah, I 100% see that. 100%.
Yeah,
I've
yeah.
been, reading comics for 40 plus years now, following the industry, and yeah, selling somebody out of the back of a car. Yeah.
Have you read the one? Is the one come out yet? The briefcase one?
Yep.
Okay, so read that one again and read it as if there's the guy trying to get into the comic book industry is on the outside, and the guy that's trying to get out of it is in the
Yep.
briefcase.
Yep.
Read it again like that. It's super funny and also horrible.
Yep. Yep. It goes back to that what's the old kind of trope, how whenever, or cliche, whenever somebody figures out a way to get into the industry, they close that door and somebody else comes along, they got to find a door.
Yeah, right. And then, but yeah, what's funny to me is the guy finally gets out at the end, but then you see all the other little dead guys inside the case.
Yep. Fantastic.
It's pretty dark, but
fantastic. Well, do you have anything else coming out that you want to let our listeners know about? Anything else to kind of promote?
I'm trying to think. Fear Case, the last issue, Fear Case might have come out or comes out soon. And then, a lot of stuff in the works about to debut. Crimson Flower just finished. And then Berserker, if you've heard of Berserker, that...
Yeah, I think a few of us have heard of Berserker.
I don't need to...
Yeah. But you look like you're having a blast working on that as well.
Yeah, no, it's also fun, man. I can't complain about anything. It's been a fun run.
Yeah, I got to think as a creator, working on a book like Berserker's got to be cathartic, because it's just all out action, blood and bullets and swords and whatever. It's just like get all your angst out in the pages of that story.
Yeah, no, it's good.
Fantastic, fantastic. Well, again, Matt, thanks so much for joining us. If people want to follow along with you, know when some of these things are, these announcements come for new work that's coming, where's the best place to follow you online?
I'm on Twitter, Matt Kindt, and then Instagram, Facebook, all the usual places. Just Google my name or search my name. I don't know.
Great, and I'll put links in the show notes, everybody, to Matt's social media. So if you're having trouble finding him, you can go and click there. And like we said, the best thing you can do to make sure you get your Bad Idea books is find a Bad Idea location store and pre-order. If there's not one in your area, there's plenty that do mail order. You really want to be reading these books. They're absolutely fantastic. So thanks again, Matt. Great to have you on the show finally, and look forward to the return of conventions and maybe that Bad Idea panel and getting to hang out a little bit.
Yeah, sounds good.
So to you listeners, as always, want to thank you for your support, and we'll talk to you next time. All right, so we really want to thank Matt for joining us, and just a reminder to be sure you go and follow his YouTube channel, subscribe, click that little bell so you get notified whenever he has content coming out. He did tell me after we stopped recording, he forgot to mention he's specifically going to have some Bad Idea content up on his channel real soon, so you can watch him do some of the drawing for Bad Idea and whatnot. So if you're a big Bad Idea fan, you want to see Matt work in progress, be sure you go and check out his YouTube channel. So now, as promised to Warren Simons, I have my own focus group here. My daughter and her friend are going to tell us what they thought of Whalesville. So again, all ages book, super fun. And now you're going to hear directly from some younger readers what they thought of the book. So we'll start with you, Sarah. What did you think of Whalesville and Rocks and Minerals?
I really liked it. I thought it was funny how Jack kept pooping on the crab's house. I thought that was really funny.
Yeah. And what about you, Aspen? Did you really like it?
I really like the story, and I also agree with Sarah. One of my favorite lines is, "Dang it, Jack! Stop pooping on my house!"
Yeah, that's pretty funny. What about you, Sarah? Any favorite lines from Whalesville?
Mine is probably the same as hers because that was really funny to me.
Well, Aspen, for several days since you've read it, you've been walking around the house saying, "What's a whale?"
Yeah.
So
I'll walk around the house and I'll be like, "You need a roof for your roof."
Oh, that one's also really good.
Yeah, that's probably my favorite line. You're going to need a roof for your roof. Well, let me ask you, Aspen, because you've read other comics. Do you think this is a comic that just about anybody who's old enough to read would enjoy?
Yeah, I think that it's more, well, I wouldn't say relatable. I think it's okay. I feel like out of all the ones that I read, it could happen more than the other ones. Like, no humans have laser eyes, but still. But I mean, you can get swallowed by a whale.
That is true.
It's just very, very rare.
Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe there are, I mean, who knows? Maybe there are towns. There are Whalesvilles inside Wales.
Yeah.
So, Sarah, did you think that the whole theme of Jack wanting to get back to his father, was that something that you can relate to? I mean, you both have dads that are very involved in your lives, so was that something that you liked?
Yes, very much.
His name is Wade.
Oh, sorry, Wade. Why did I say Jack?
I don't know, you said Jack.
Yeah, Way. That's right. I don't know why I thought his name was Jack. Yes, his name is Way. You are correct. Wayne or Way. Okay, but what about Rocks and Minerals? I know when you finished reading it, Sarah, you said, well, or maybe it was while you were reading, you said, well, this story kind of makes sense. What did you mean by that?
Well, it was probably during the Queen's story. Probably because it does make sense. Probably because we walk on them a lot and drive on them. and break them. And if they were actually alive, I don't think they'd appreciate that.
That's probably true. What did you think of Rocks and Minerals, Aspen?
I agree with Sarah. Although I guess they didn't know that we as humans are called humans because they call us soft skins. I mean they're all rough, so it makes sense. But like they make we make buildings and roads and streets and everything out of them. And then there was one part where two of the rocks were just walking, and then there was a duck named Bob.
Yeah, there's a duck named Bob. You think that's a funny name for a duck?
Yeah, I would pick like quack quack or something.
Yeah.
I mean, he said like quack like 12 times.
Yeah. Did you guys think that the Rocks and Minerals story was kind of about belonging and finding a place where you're accepted? Or did you think it was kind of about something else? What did you think?
I thought it was about like being accepted and where you belong.
Yeah, I also agree with Sarah because what was I don't remember what the weird rock's name was. Oh, rock. But he needed to get back to a pond because he couldn't live in a Elpis.
Because he was really a turtle?
Yeah.
Yeah, Elpis couldn't live in dry land.
And the other rocks were willing to even get in trouble to make sure that he could go back to where he belonged. So I thought that was cool. It was showing that they cared and that they felt that, Elpis being where he belonged was important, and they were willing to help out with that. So that was pretty cool. Now, what about, go ahead.
And one other lesson is don't be a snitch.
Don't be a snitch.
Think about yourself. Don't care what other people do.
Okay, what about the art? Because the art in Whalesville is very sort of detailed and a little bit stylized. And in Rocks and Minerals, Tony Millionaire is the artist. Adam Polina is the artist in the Whalesville story. And Adam Polina and Tony Millionaire, they have very different styles. Like I said, sort of stylized and detailed in Whalesville, and a little more kind of blocky and maybe more traditionally cartoon-like in Rocks and Minerals. So do you guys prefer one art style over the other? Did you like them both? What did you think about the art? We'll start with you, Sarah.
I really liked both arts. I really did like that it was detailed in the Whalesville, but also the Rocks and Minerals one was it. I kind of preferred the Whalesville art because I felt like it had a lot more work into it than Rocks and Minerals.
What about you, Aspen?
Well, I think that I like Rocks and Minerals more because I like the more cartoony look. I mean, they probably have the same amount of effort put in. It's just that those two styles are different. And there are different styles in pretty much everything.
Yeah.
So
that is true.
So would you guys say that you would recommend to your friends to read this? It's worth your time, and it's funny, and you guys will be referring to it and quoting lines.
Yes.
Talking about roofs and what's whale, stop pooping on my roof every time you hang out, probably for a while at least. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you two for joining me and giving us your opinion on Whalesville. You heard it, everybody. Straight from, I did not pay them. They're not being paid to be on here. Sorry, girls. But yeah, you're getting their honest opinion of two, one 9 and one 10-year-old of what they think of Whalesville. So we thank them for their time. Once again, we thank Matt for joining us, and we thank all of you for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.